So let's talk about how easily you can raise your credit score by paying your credit card on this date. So let me first explain how this works, and I'll be quick. But if you want to build a better credit score, you're going to want to know as much as you can about how credit works. So this hack is going to help your credit in two ways. First is payment history, which is 35% of your credit score, and in my opinion, the most important. And the second way paying your card on this date will help boost your credit score is credit utilization, which is 30% of your credit score. And that's broken up into percentages. 0 to 9%, which is considered excellent, but in my opinion, you want to be in the 2 to 5% for the highest possible credit score. 10 to 29% credit usage, which is considered good. You're going to fall in the mid to upper 600s. If everything falls in line, maybe you hit that 700 mark. Next is 30 to 49% usage, which is considered fair, capping your credit score at the mid to lower 600s. 50 to 74%, which is considered poor, giving you a credit score in the range of 570 to the lower 600s. Oh man, here comes that sun. God, last is anything over 74%, which is considered extremely poor. If you fall in that range, you're lucky if you break a 580 credit score. I got too many things going on over here. It's too early for this. I got the sun right here in my eye. We're gonna start getting the shadow. There we go. It's right here. Got to get back a little bit. I got my printer auto cleaning over here, and then I got a few birds chirping. So I'm gonna push through this video. I'm not gonna stop it. We're gonna keep going. So we're gonna see that sun going crazy, but we're moving. So these numbers are not set in stone. There's a lot of factors that go into your credit score. So for example, I had to carry balances of more than 75% for months, and my score went from a 690 to a 585. Not because I had late payments, not because I had missed payments, not because I had collections, but because I had a high balance that I was carrying on my cards. But within a few months and adding another 10% to my credit usage, which made it 85% credit usage instead of that original 75, my credit score rose to 638. And that's because I have a lot of things in my credit report that help raise my credit score, even with 85% usage, like the amount of debt I have, payment history, credit mix, oldest credit line. All these things come into play when the algorithm determines your credit score, the biggest being your payment history. You just have to remember that even if you can't throw anything extra at your payment every month, you make at least the monthly minimum payment, because removing a late payment can be just as difficult as removing a collection and can have just as big an impact. So there's a myth out there that just making your minimum payment won't help raise your credit score, leading some people to believe, well, if it won't help raise my credit score, then I'm not even gonna make that payment because it doesn't matter. Remember, missing just one payment can throw your whole credit building game off. And this may fall into the no category, but if you're 18, 19 years old and new to credit, you may not know that, just like I didn't. So the credit score you're ultimately gonna arrive at is gonna depend on what's in your credit score. So it's not like, well, I have 0 to 9% credit usage, I'm gonna have a 700 plus credit score. You may have a collection, or you may have a late payment. You may not have enough established credit, meaning you just opened the card a few months ago and you're new to credit. So that doesn't mean you're gonna have a 700 credit score just because you haven't used that card yet. I have more videos explaining credit factors, so I'm not gonna get into that here. So let's go back to credit usage and payment history. In these two categories alone, 65% of your credit score. I'm gonna show you a hack within a hack down the line in this video if you're not paying off your debt entirely. So in order to be in that 700 credit score range, you're gonna wanna, God, fell by itself over here. I don't even know what that was. Too many things going on this morning. I said, you know what? I'm gonna record early morning because it's quiet and it's actually the loudest time of the day. All right, here we go. So in order to be at the 700 credit score range, you're gonna wanna have a lower than 7% credit usage, but higher than 1%. You wanna get as close as you can to 1% usage. I know there's people out there that are gonna say you can't go below 5% credit usage to have a high 700 credit score. There's also other people out there that are gonna say you can't have any debt, you can't go above 0% usage. But in my own personal experience, I notice I get the best results when I fall between a 1 and 7% credit usage rate. If you do have a high 700 or above credit score with above a 7% usage rate, let me know in the comment section. All right, so we finally made it to the good part, and this is how we're gonna hack our credit card payment to keep our credit usage low. All right, so to start, I'm gonna explain how the credit card billing cycle works, and there's 3 important dates you need to know. First is opening date. Second is closing/statement date, and third is your due date. So the opening date is pretty self-explanatory. It's a date your billing cycle starts. Your credit card closing date is the last day of your billing cycle, and your statement date usually is going to be generated within 24 hours of that closing date. And your due date is at least 21 days after your closing date. We're going to have our billing cycle. I don't like that color, so let's go back here. Our billing cycle. Okay, so there's two timelines that are important. That's all you really have to remember. This timeline right here, this timeline right here. There's one point, here's another point, and another point. So we have our opening date, statement opening date. This is gonna be the most important one. So there's gonna be three different things going on right here. You're gonna have your closing date, your statement date, and your reporting date. So these 3 days happen within 24 hours of each other, all right here. So you're gonna have your closing date and your statement date that kind of fall within the same day, but usually within 24 hours of each other. And after that date, if this reporting date doesn't happen the same day, it's gonna happen within 24 hours of your statement date. And then over here, we have our due date, which is usually 21 days after your statement date. And this is considered our 21-day grace. Okay, back to the timelines right here. So your credit card, let's say you have a $5,000 balance right here, right? $5,000 balance. So after your closing date, which is right here, you're gonna have a minimum payment due, which is usually a small percentage of your balance. So it's probably gonna be around $150 to $200, right? Depends on your interest. So what we wanna do is pay 95% of our statement balance to bring our credit usage down to 5%. So if you pay that over here in this red timeline, it's not gonna do anything to help our credit because the reporting date is gonna fall within 24 hours of our statement date right here. So if you pay anywhere within this timeline right here, it's not doing anything to help our credit. So what we wanna do is pay in this blue timeline over here between the statement opening date and before the closing date. We wanna get right around 3 days before the closing date. And the reason we're paying it 3 days before the closing date is because there's processing time. So if you pay it 2 days, even 1 day before the closing date, it might not reflect on your statement and you virtually make that payment for nothing. So we want to wait at least 3 days before the closing date. You can even pay it a week before, 2 weeks before, but if you're using that card on a regular, it's really not going to make sense to pay a week or two ahead of time. So wait at least 3 days before the closing date to make that payment. So if we pay 95% over here of our statement balance, now hold on. If you don't have 95%, further down the line in this video, I'm going to show you a hack within a hack, what you can do if you don't have that 95% to put to this credit card. But for now, we're paying 95% of our statement balance 3 days before the closing date, which is $4,750, $4,750. It's going to report right here, and it's going to bring our usage down to 5%. But if we pay that same amount right here and we move that over here, that's not going to do anything because it was already reported over here. If we don't use a card anymore, we have to wait a whole other billing cycle in order for it to be reported. But remember, even though we made our 95% payment over here, we still have a minimum payment due that's going to be due right around this time right here. So this is my billing cycle. July 29th is the opening date and August 28th is the closing date. So that is one billing cycle. So anything inside of that billing cycle is going to be reported to my credit report. So this bill already closed and I have a minimum payment due of $57. So if I make this $57 payment, it's not going to be reflected on my credit report because it's being paid after the billing cycle closed and after the reporting date, which is going to be up to 24 hours from the closing date. So if you only have a certain amount to use to throw at your debt, take that into account when making the payment. So if you want to pay $1,000 right here, only pay, let's say $800 if you know your minimum payment is going to be $200 because you're going to have to make that over here. So anything in this range right here is what's going to be reported to your credit report. So like I said, you can make that payment over here on the first week of your statement date. But if you're still using the card from here to here, it's really not going to make any sense to pay it early. So just make sure you make that payment 3 days before your closing date, not after, not before. By paying down 95% of your credit usage 3 days before your closing date, that's going to bring your credit usage down to 5%. Putting you right in that sweet spot to earning that 700 or above credit score. But you're only going to hit that 700 if everything else lines up. Good credit history, good credit mix, no charge-offs, no collections. If you do have charge-offs and collections, check out my credit repair course. It has proven results where I show you how to remove those negative items that are anchoring your credit score down, keeping you from being approved for a house, keeping you from being approved for a new car, keeping you from that high limit credit card you want. So what if you don't have 95% of your statement balance to throw at your debt? I get it. We all can't spare a few grand to pay down our credit. But what you want to do is make any extra payment you can using this hack. Just remember that after the statement date, you're still gonna have a minimum payment due. So whatever you can afford to spare, using this hack within that billing cycle, pay it. While you won't see your credit score skyrocket to the 700s, it is gonna lower your credit usage, because before what you were doing is waiting for your statement to arrive and then making your minimum payment. So that really wasn't doing anything to help your credit. But what you're gonna do now, even if you can only pay the minimum, you're paying it before the statement date, boosting your credit score over time. So let's say you do pay 95% of your credit usage and you go check your credit score 3 days after your statement date and see that it hasn't been updated. Well, it can take up to a week for your credit report, whether it be Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, for it to update on your credit report. It doesn't mean it's being reported on a different day or it's being reported late. It just means that it hasn't been updated yet. So just remember, if you have multiple credit cards, you're gonna need to do this hack across the board throughout all your credit cards, because you'll need a 5% usage throughout your credit report, not just one credit card. Man, that sun's getting crazy. I need to end this video. So at the top of this video, I was gonna show you kind of a hack within a hack. If you couldn't afford to pay 95% of your statement balance to reflect 5% to boost your credit score. So if you're in the market for a new high limit credit card or want to be approved for a new car, I'm gonna show you a hack in the next video, just because the sun is getting too crazy, of how you can pay 95% of your statement balance without it hurting your pocket. So I'll have that video linked right here somewhere. I hope this video was helpful. Try to rush it a little bit just because I knew that sun was coming out. Now it's almost fully out. So thanks for watching. Links in the description. Credit repair course. See you next time.